Retro Now.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and whenever I'm in this part of the galaxy, I listen to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Makes flying a little more tolerable. Don't tell Anakin.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithlin.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we have a guest this evening, the one and only Ryder Waldron. Ryder, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks. I appreciate you having me. This is always my favorite podcast to guest on, so I love it. Thanks.
Well, yeah, we are starting off our annual movie discussion series, which we'll get into in just a second. Of course, this year we are discussing The Force Awakens, and traditionally we start that with you, Ryder. So I'm glad you could make it back in time for this. We're sneaking it in under the wire for January, but it's been busy, to say the least. I know Jay and I both had a lot going on. But before we get into discussion, Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are?
Sure thing, Dennis. We are on Facebook and Instagram very conveniently at Podcast Stardust.
All right. That is the line. The signal is boosted to maximum output. Shield is down. We're now broadcasting to the galaxy. So, Force Awakens, Part 1. And this is actually year 11 of The Force Awakens, but we had choice to make last year between Revenge of the Sith and The Force Awakens for movies celebrating milestone anniversaries that ended with 5s and 0s, and it just seemed more appropriate to do Revenge of the Sith for its 20th than it did The Force Awakens for 10. So that's how we ended up with this, because we don't have a movie that we haven't covered that would fit into this slot for 2026. So again, I'm excited to talk about this, and it has a lot to do with the fact that we've got 2 new movies coming out, and I just feel like we're kind of in the same space as we were back in 2014, 2015, as we are now leading up to The Mandalorian, Grogu, and Starfighter. So before we dive into that, Ryder, welcome back. Glad you can make it. Of course, you are primarily on Idiot's Array, and we've got back episodes of the Star Wars School of Dentistry we can all enjoy out there.
Yep.
But how are things?
Been great. I am excited to be able to talk about The Force Awakens. And when I started watching this, I was mostly excited because it took me back to like 2014, 2015, when the movie was coming out. And it seemed like one of the best times to be a Star Wars fan. I was like, new movie coming out, which you mentioned with Mando and Grogu coming out. Exciting time. But that was just, it seemed like all Star Wars fans were kind of on the same side at that point. We were all excited about a new movie, and so I haven't watched The Force Awakens in a long time, so like every time I'm on with you guys, it makes me rewatch the movies that I haven't watched in a while, and I just love starting this off. It was great.
I'm glad to hear that. I feel the exact same way, Ryder. I am so excited right now. I mean, Jay and I have been talking about this for weeks, and she teases me with it, which is just about the hype that I'm looking forward to, especially with Starfighter, since it's got brand new characters that we don't even know. And you're 100% correct. There was nothing like the community around Star Wars that there was when we were leading into that time with The Force Awakens, what was happening at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim, and then just, everyone rallying around the various trailers that came out. But this kind of gets us into some of the questions that I've set up to get us into the discussion. And Jay, I'm going to let you lead off with the first question that we have for Ryder.
Yeah, absolutely. You did definitely draft some new ones. And Ryder, you kind of led into some of these already. And I love that because we're all of the same wavelength or mind length, I guess you could say. So where were you, fandom wise, when you heard that Disney was making new Star Wars movies? So, or do you remember even like where you were physically? when you heard about
I
this?
remember exactly where I was. I was sitting in my office at work, and I got a text from my mom saying that Disney has bought Lucasfilm or bought Star Wars, is probably what she said, and they're going to make new movies. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous. That cannot be true. My mom is reading some weird site or something, and it was totally true. And I was so excited. One of the big reasons I was so excited is because I never thought I would get to take my kids. I have three boys. I never thought I'd get to take them to see a new Star Wars movie. I had taken my oldest to see the 3D release of The Phantom Menace, but I never thought I would get to take them to see an original movie. So I remember when the teaser trailer came out for The Force Awakens, we drove to Salt Lake to see, I think it was the Penguins of Madagascar. But the main reason was to go see, this was the closest we could get, or the closest theater that was showing the teaser trailer. And it was just exciting. So yeah, I do remember exactly where I was and exactly how I felt.
That is fantastic.
I love that. And for the same reason that that's exactly what I thought when I heard this, is that I have two boys and I dreamed of being able to take them to a new Star Wars movie. And I love that we all have boys here on this panel to see me.
That's true, we do.
Yeah, but that was one of the first, and just like you, Ryder, when I first saw it online, I was like, what joke is this? Who is pulling my leg that we are getting, one, Disney bought Lucasfilm, and two, that we're getting new Star Wars movies. And then when I saw places like the Force.net reporting, I was like, oh, I guess there's actually something to this. And yeah, it was really, really exciting that was happening. Of course, it meant they pulled the plug on Legends at the same time. You know, what now is Legends, but hey, I guess small price to pay to get Stars back on the big screen.
Yep.
So question number 2, and this is a very broad question, so answer it however you like. But what was your very favorite theory, fan theory or otherwise, or bit of hype, something that you saw, something that you heard that led up to the actual movie's release?
Gosh, I don't even know if I can think of anything. I think the main thing, I think maybe the main thing was that Luke and Han and Leia were coming back. I didn't think we'd ever get to see that. That would probably be it. And I can't remember if it was in the teaser trailer or the regular trailer that we saw Darth Vader's mask. But one thing I can think that was super, that I guess it raised more questions for me, was Kylo Ren walking through the snow in the teaser trailer and stomping his foot down and igniting his lightsaber, and thought, oh, who's that guy? Because he looks really cool. We have a new lightsaber. This might be the coolest lightsaber. And so I think maybe the questions it raised, I guess maybe hyped me up a little bit more, that, you know, where are Han and Luke and Leia at this point? Who's this new bad guy? And who the heck found Darth Vader's mask?
No, I love it. Yeah. And keep those thoughts about that lightsaber in mind, because that's going to come up here in a bit.
Oh, okay. So my turn. So tell us about your first viewing. What was that like for The Force Awakens?
Okay, so I got to go see it. We have some friends that live by us, and she was involved in some kind of a charity, and they had rented out the theater, a theater in Salt Lake, which is 30 minutes from here, whatever. And we got to go the Thursday before, and it was just super cool. I can remember seeing, you know, the crawl come on, and like, this is not happening. This is amazing. And my wife got to go with me, and I remember seeing it, and I thought, this is like, it was almost like perfect to me. And not that The Force Awakens is a perfect movie or anything like that, but it was just a perfect setting. It was wintertime. I love wintertime. Star Wars never came out in the wintertime, and it did this time, and it was so cool. And then I had bought tickets to see The Force Awakens, I think, 2 times on Friday and 2 times on Saturday, so I could take my kids. I was so excited. My kids were I don't know, under 10 at the time, and I was just like, this is going to blow their minds. And I'm just so excited to get them in love with Star Wars. They'd seen the Clone Wars and they'd seen all the other Star Wars movies, but I wanted them to see it on the big screen, and it was just, yeah, it was like magical. Like I was tearing up knowing that my kids are right here and I'm seeing new Star Wars, and it's just, yeah, it was just awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, do you remember how many times, since you saw it twice one day and twice the next day, but how many total viewings in the theater did you have? I'm just curious.
I think I made it Oh, let me think. I think it was 7, which
Mhm.
doesn't seem like that many, but I think it was around 7.
Mhm. How many did
Uh,
you do, Dennis? I can't remember.
7, as a matter of fact.
7?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I got you guys
I
beat. I have 11.
Oh, show off.
Yeah, I was remembering at the time that I planned on seeing it like once a week for weeks and weeks and weeks, whenever how long it was out. Because like
Mhm.
when the Phantom Menace came out, I saw that one 21 times in theaters.
Yeah, saw a whole bunch.
And then, but just I didn't have kids then. I didn't have other
Yeah.
big life responsibilities, which simply made it a lot harder, especially at the time of year that it was out. Because I saw it twice that Friday. I went and saw an early showing with my wife on Friday morning, and then I went that evening with the boys. And then I saw it again right after that. I think with the three of them, I took my parents when they came down for the holidays. I took my father-in-law and sister-in-law right off the bat. And so that was like 5 times inside of a week or two. And then because it was over the holidays, it was so easy to take people. This was something to do when people were coming to visit. And then before it left theaters, I found 2 more opportunities to go see it. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I wanted to see it a whole lot more, but it just was, like I said, it's just so much harder when you've got kids and other
Oh,
life
yeah.
responsibilities that, the older you get and until I guess the kids fly the nest, but still.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
11 for you, Jay. Good job.
Well, I only saw Phantom Menace once in the theater until it was
Oh.
re-released, so you definitely got me for that one, that's for sure. I was pregnant that summer with my first kid, which is crazy
Mm.
to think about now that I'm gonna be a grandma, so that's insane. And I still pinch myself every time I say that too, it's like I'm having an out-of-body experience. Kinda crazy.
So
Yeah.
something about a new Star Wars movie starting a new era and children. Okay.
Yeah, there
So
you go.
question number 4. Who was your favorite character from The Force Awakens?
Kylo Ren. Rey was
Kylo Ren?
probably a close second, but Kylo Ren, there was just so many questions around him, conflicted, cool, and I loved Kylo Ren, but Rey was a close second, but it had to be Kylo.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wrestle with that question quite a bit. I feel like I go back and forth no matter, what day it is, how I'm feeling, I guess. But okay, so our last question before we get into the segment is what was your favorite scene from The Force Awakens?
Oh boy. Um, oh gosh, I don't even know if I could say that. I guess maybe the towards the end when they're having the lightsaber battle, Rey and Kylo, and they're both. He wants the lightsaber and she pulls it and it goes shooting past him and or yeah, it goes past Kylo and Rey catches it. I just thought that was I don't know, that just ignited something. I don't know what, but I thought that was
Mhm.
probably my favorite. That's a tough one because there's so many Han Solo scenes that are just great.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'm gonna go with that one for right now. I'm gonna go with that one today.
Good call.
Yeah. No, I like it. It was such a big moment in the movie as well. So,
Definitely.
all right. Well, good job, Ryder. So we'll
Thank
go
you.
ahead and get into the segment now, and we're starting, of course, at the beginning of the movie and going to about 10 minutes and 41 seconds. First off, this was the first Star Wars movie that did not feature the Fox fanfare at the beginning, and
Mhm.
I don't know that it matters so much anymore because it had been so long. We had so many movies that came out, after Lucasfilm was acquired by Disney, and of course they were distributing the movies themselves, and they didn't have to have it. But that whole fanfare influenced the key that the Star Wars theme was written, and so a little bit different there. Did that stand out to either of you at all when that movie first came out?
I was a little disappointed when I found out that it wouldn't be there. I don't know if I assumed that or heard that because of Disney owning it, but a little disappointed because that was kind of a magical sound when we were kids and heard Star Wars. We knew it was Star Wars time. I have that as my ringtone when my kids call me the Fox fanfare. And
Nice.
so I was a little disappointed. I don't know, now when I was watching this a couple times the last couple days, getting ready for this, I noticed it, but it wasn't there. But is it that big of a deal? Not really.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we're such Pavlov's dogs, in that way
Uh
that
huh.
as soon as we hear it, it just brings us right into the mood, so to speak. So I
Yep.
guess it's now that we've had so many different types of creative projects without it. I don't miss it as much, but it's definitely, you know, when you do hear it, it definitely brings back that nostalgia factor for sure.
Well,
Indeed.
even when I see a movie that's not Star Wars, but it has a 20th Century Fox at the first, I still think of Star Wars when I hear
Mhm.
that.
Yep,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, because now that it's 20th Century Studios, because they dropped the Fox part since
Mm.
they acquired that there. I guess it does show up again at the beginning of some of the Star Wars movies, but the ones that were produced under Fox or whatever, and that's great. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of that moment where it's like, all right, settle down. A Star Wars movie is about to start, and
Yeah.
then you get the Star Wars theme and the opening crawl, and then it's like you're launched into Star Wars. But speaking of the opening crawl, I'm going to go ahead and read it here. It says, Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Luke Skywalker has vanished. In his absence, the sinister First Order has risen from the ashes of the Empire and will not rest until Skywalker, the last Jedi, guess that should have been a clue for the next movie, has been destroyed. With the support of the Republic, General Leia Organa leads a brave resistance. She is desperate to find her brother Luke and gain his help in restoring peace and justice to the galaxy. Leia has sent her most daring pilot on a secret mission to Jakku, where an old ally has discovered a clue to Luke's whereabouts. So, I will point out that in Star Wars fashion, there's a number of words that are listed in all caps. And in this one, it is First Order, Republic, and Resistance. So they're kind of highlighting the different sides to us. But Ryder, what stands out to you from the opening crawl?
The thing that I noticed the most is Luke Skywalker has vanished. Like, where did he go? And then it says, the First Order, and I'm trying to put all this together that the First Order is kind of taken over where the Empire was, and I'm wondering, did Luke Skywalker disappear and they just kind of filled that vacuum, that void? I was curious about that. I mean, even reading back through this, or watching it, it's kind of hard to keep all the pieces together. And then you have the Republic, but you have the Resistance. Like, how does that work out? And then, I almost had to go back through like world history to see how these things could actually be, put together with, I don't know, I don't have any examples right now, but so those are the things I noticed. General Leia Organa was a big one. And who is this daring pilot, the most daring pilot that Leia could send out? I was curious about that at first.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watch this, I try to put myself in the position of, I've never seen this movie before. How would I react seeing this for the first time again? And so those are the things that came up for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Jay, how about you?
Yeah, again, like you, Ryder, I was trying to put myself back into that seat in the theater when I was seeing this crawl for the first time. And I will admit that I was holding back tears as soon as the fanfare and everything started, because
Mm-hmm.
we never thought we were going to get another movie in the theater. So it was just like, oh my gosh, this is full circle. But I remember when I saw that Luke Skywalker had vanished, that, there was all of the speculation, like, okay, where could he go? And I'm thinking, is this a Yoda moment? Like, what happened? Because Yoda vanished for a while. So what's going on? And of course, like you with the whole General Leia Organa thing, that not surprising that she would, work her way up the ranks after Return of the Jedi, and that she would still stay very, very active. But yeah, this daring pilot reminds you of those Saturday morning, the old serials kind of thing, the dashing, daring pirate kind of thing. So now we have a pilot instead of a pirate.
Yep.
What about you, Dennis?
Well, there's a couple things. One, the very first time I saw this, as soon as Star Wars showed up on the screen, someone took a picture, and I was like, "Oh, put your phone away! Come on, let's just enjoy the movie." And it's like, and fortunately, that didn't happen again. And then just but it was that, and then like everyone started clapping as soon as that's the bah, 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 all the fanfare, everything started, and so that was just, it was amazing. Just you're in tears. I'm sitting there like, I cannot believe I'm watching another new Star Wars movie. So that's fantastic. Two, I thought about this a lot, and I was trying to remember what we knew about this movie going into it. And I do remember there was a lot of reports from the likes of Making Star Wars and other websites and podcasts that were deep into the behind the scenes stuff, that it didn't matter how much you tried to avoid this stuff. It started leaking out there and infecting our Twitter feeds. And you talk about Ryder at the beginning of this discussion about how like unified the Star Wars fandom was. remember how much politer and nicer Twitter was
Yes, I
at the
do.
time?
Yes, I
And
do.
so, you followed enough people and this stuff just circulated. And one of the things is that part of this was going to be like the hunt for Luke Skywalker. So it wasn't a big surprise to me that, okay, Luke is gone, but that's the first line of the crawl, is Luke Skywalker has vanished. But now looking back at it, reading this, and I don't know about you guys, but I kind of just take the crawl for granted when I watch Star Wars most of the time now. It comes on and, Star Wars is something that I'm either focused on heavily or I'm so comfortable with these movies that they're on in the background and I sit down for my favorite scenes and the like. But then I was reading this. In his absence, the First Order has arisen from the ashes of the Empire and will not rest until Skywalker, the Last Jedi, has been destroyed. And it got me thinking, the history of the First Order has kind of gotten muddled ever since this. We've got Bloodline that Claudia Gray wrote. We've got other tie-in books that were released at that time. We've got various comics that have tried to tell the story of the backstory of Ben Solo and Kylo Ren and Luke's temple that been destroyed and all the likes. And it's kind of all over the place. And I don't know that there really is a good way of unifying all of that content that's come out. And at any rate, as an aside, but this idea that Luke being gone allowed a new evil to arise from the ashes of the Empire and take over things. And it's just like, Luke, how could you let that happen? What are you doing? And so, we come to find out he had a good reason, of course, with well, we could debate that, I suppose. But anyway, there's a reason for all of that over the next couple of movies. But yeah, it was just striking to me that, and then how dedicated Leia is to finding him so that she can put an end to this. And here's the other thing, here we are. This crawl says, with the support of the Republic, General Leia Organa leaves a brave resistance. Well, again, thinking of Bloodline, she's an outcast after it's been revealed that Darth Vader is her father. And so this is kind of she's almost an exile in her own way, if you follow that. And not only that, she's not using the most current generation of technology. So she's getting support from the Republic. They're giving her military surplus, as best I can tell, from years ago. So anyway, it's I don't want to get bogged down in that, but it kind of seems like maybe they lost a little bit of direction afterwards here. And perhaps that explains why they've been so careful since the Rise of Skywalker not to give us a whole lot of content that came after this, so that when they get around to giving us the new movies, especially like Starfighter and the like, they have a clean slate and maybe they can keep a little bit tighter reins over things. I hope so anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a good observation.
Well, thank you for indulging me in that side trip there.
I love that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
But so we are now on Jakku, and we are looking up from the surface at the moons, and we see a First Order Star Destroyer fly across the moon, and then a number of landing craft launch. What did y'all think about that image? That was something that struck me at the time. But before I comment on it, Ryder, what did you think about that way? Because, I'm comparing it to A New Hope, where you get that awe-inspiring Star Destroyer flying overhead. But this is a different way of introducing a ship at the beginning of a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it was. And I don't think we've had anything like that since. It was kind of cool. A little bit of a tease. And then you see those little shuttles come out the side. What always strikes me with this is the music. Right when those shuttles come out, it's like this kind of like, I don't want to say lighthearted, but it's not like an intense, like, oh, here come the bad guys. It was a little lighter than that, it seemed like to me. And, we automatically just forget about the Star Destroyer because you see these shuttles coming down and, seeing the stormtroopers in there was just like, oh my gosh, this is really happening. It's making me all flustered just thinking about it right now because it's like so exciting from when we first got to see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, well, thinking like you said, in comparison to the original Star Wars, where you had the big Star Destroyer flying overhead, and then you think to yourself, oh my gosh, is this thing ever going to end? It just keeps going and going and going. This one completely blocks out the planet. So it's a different perspective. And to me, it was kind of like sending the message that this First Order that has risen from the ashes of the Empire is like Empire 2.0, it's bigger, it's badder, it's bolder, and it's just going to overshadow the whole planet and do all these things. So it was more intimidating in that way, that it literally blocked out the light. And I think that's also prophetic too, that it's blocking out the light, that because we have this dark force blocking the light kind of thing.
I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it because if you think about the Star Wars movies that came before, like I said, in A New Hope, that's one of the things that just gripped people automatically. You've got the Tantive 4 screaming across, and then you got this gigantic Star Destroyer that just won't end, and you're just impressed by the size, and it's an angle that just blew everybody's mind. And it's one of those things that's talked about to this day. Every time, the first time seeing A New Hope. Empire Strikes Back, you get another Star Destroyer, and you see it clearly as it's launching probes across the galaxy, whether ironically looking for Luke, and then, or coincidentally, I should say. And then The Empire Strikes Back, more Star Destroyers as Darth Vader is arriving at the second Death Star. And then you go through the Phantom Menace. You got a consular ship as it's approaching Naboo to reach the Trade Federation. Attack of the Clones. You've got Amidala's ships as they're arriving in Coruscant. And Revenge of the Sith, you get an entire battle full of ships. And the point is you clearly see the ships in all of those movies. And this one, we get the silhouette of the Star Destroyer against that moon in here. And they save the reveal of the Star Destroyer for after everything that's come, most everything we're about to talk about in this segment here. So it's just an interesting stylistic choice because this movie captures so many beats of the from A New Hope. And, we get into the whole ring theory, it rhymes, yada, 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 which everyone talks about ad nauseum when they're talking about Star Wars but it just kind of impacted me. We didn't get a clear look at that shit. And so we got the transports, which are some of the least important things in the entire movie by comparison. So, but Ryder, you brought up the stormtroopers, and one of the things that the teaser from this movie did, like a full year before, like right before Thanksgiving, I think is when that dropped, because we were all sitting by our computers, refreshing, waiting for it to come up. We got the teaser, and it gave us one of those images of the stormtroopers standing in the transport. And I wonder if that did a disservice to the movie. And here's why, is that what I noticed in this rewatch is that they kind of try and do a reveal of the stormtroopers here, which is that when we get the interior of the transports, it's dark and there's like a little bit of light flickering, and then all of a sudden the lights flicker on, like they get so far into the atmosphere and you see stormtroopers. But I wonder how that would have landed if we had not seen that exact same shot in the teaser. But I don't know. Anyone got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that because we already knew coming into this from the trailers that there was going to be stormtroopers, and it might have hit differently if we had no idea that those stormtroopers were coming and we're like, oh wow, this is serious. Like Jay said, it's Empire 2.0. They have the same type of troops, they have nearly the same type of armor, but it looks cooler. But I can remember, like, leading up to probably the summer before, they put out a 6-inch Black Series of that First Order Stormtrooper. It was really hard to get at first. And so, I guess promotionally, maybe it's telling people this is not the prequels. This is a Star Wars. This is the Star Wars you grew up on, and, trying to reel back fans who may not have loved the prequels. But I did love the tease of the flickering lights, and, like, you don't get a real good look at the stormtroopers right away. Which kind of contrasts with Kylo's entrance later on that we can talk about. But I love the First Order Stormtrooper armor. I think we became so, like, used to original trilogy Stormtroopers that it's almost like a boring looking uniform, which it's not. But these the new First Order armor is, like, super cool to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're kind of the eye Stormtroopers, I think is what people were calling it at the time. Yeah. But Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't remember being, disappointed or anything in getting to know that we were getting stormtroopers, I guess you could say. It just, to me, just felt like a normal progression from where they were. But I do like the reveal in the transport that was the flickering lights, because to me it was almost like a haunted house. Like when you're in a haunted house and you see like the strobe lights and you can kind of see the monsters, but then you can't. And so it feels so much more intimidating. And sometimes stormtroopers get a bad rap, as not being intimidating. I mean, when you go back to the original trilogy, they were, I feel like, a lot more intimidating then. And I think that was really trying to maybe imitate that feeling, and then putting a little bit more emphasis on the fact that, these are, once again, reinvented, and they're the newer, they're better, they're shinier, they have different armor. So it's, just adding to that whole, history and the whole idea of the stormtrooper itself. But yeah,
we'll definitely stick a pin in that, because I have the question about that in just a bit. So you're reading my mind, Jay.
Always.
Yeah, well, we've been podcasting for nearly 7 years, so hey, or actually longer than that. But regardless,
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it was the, again, just like all the Star Wars movies, this is one that we've seen so many times at this point that it was just as often happens when we do these episodes where we're talking about 10 minutes of the movie, all of a sudden it stands out to you. It's like, oh wow, that was supposed to be a reveal, but they kind of gave it away in the teaser. And for what it's worth, I do like the Stormtroopers too, and I was actually reassured when I heard there was going to be Stormtroopers in there, just because it did lend into that nostalgia that we're all used to with classic Star Wars imagery. But the next thing we see, talk about breaking the mold, is BB-8. And he is there on the surface of Jakku, and he spots these transports coming in for a landing, and then immediately heads off to report to Poe Dameron. So BB-8 was not a surprise, of course, when we got the movie, because he was in the teaser that came out the year before, and then they wheeled him out on stage at Star Wars Celebration, and we all saw that video here. So I don't know. I like BB-8, but what do y'all think of the new version of the astromech droid, the Rolly, as they became to be known in Star Wars Resistance? So, Ryder?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, every Star Wars movie has something, maybe new clone armor in the prequels, or, a new droid here and there, new ships, things like that. But this was really a unique design, and seeing him in the teaser trailer just raised a lot of questions, like what the heck is that and how does that work? And I thought it was interesting that a lot of the stuff that we didn't know about, BB-8 for one, Kylo Ren, the stormtroopers, we get those like in this 10-minute segment right away. The things they held are the things that we really know about, Leia, Han, and Luke, and they held those for later in the movie to have even better reveals of those. So I don't know what I'm trying to say with all that, but I thought BB-8 was really cool, and he reminds me of my dog. He's kind of a little timid and likes to be, I don't know, he likes security and safety and things like that. And so I always feel so bad when he has to go off on his own, but I love how he just goes rolling right into Poe. He finds some information he's got to go tell his owner. And I think he's a super cool droid. I love everything about him.
Cool. And Jay?
Oh, I fell in love with them right away. I mean, just right away. And I always love the droids. I always gravitate towards the droids. And I mean, there's been some sense that I'm like, I could take it or leave it. But there's something about BB-8 that he literally came in like a wrecking ball, And like you said, Ryder, too, he's got this kind of diverse personality where he's not afraid to do what he needs to do, but yet he's also just a little timid at the same time. And I just fell in love with him. And I'm sitting here staring at my little BB-8 remote control droid that I got from Best Buy, because I finally cleaned out my office and I'm actually able to display him now. So I need to pull him out and actually play with him again. I need to download the app and everything. But I was super excited to see what this little droid was going to do from here on out, and what kind of role he was going to play. And obviously he's kind of the, ring theory version, I guess you could say, of R2-D2 in a lot of ways, but not replacing him, obviously, but just the evolution, if you will, of that type of droid. But what do you think overall, Dennis?
Oh, I liked him just fine. It's only in retrospect that I feel like BB-8's screen time came at the expense of R2-D2, which is like our classic family dog droid type there. And, he was in shutdown mode, preserving the star map data all of these years after Luke disappeared. And so, he'd just been sitting in a corner in the car at the Resistance base for forever, waiting for some key that he could reactivate so they could help them find Luke, which is fine. And I like BB-8 plenty, but one of the promises of this movie was that nostalgia pull when we knew that there, as Ryder suggested earlier, we were going to get Luke, Leia, and Han again here. And then 3PO shows up in the middle of it. I mean, of course, we got Chewbacca, but then R2 is, they pull off a sheet later in this movie and he's just sitting in the corner, deactivated, not doing anything. And finally, it's not until the last few minutes of this movie that he really turns himself on and participates in the whole story. So that's it. If I have a criticism, it's just that BB-8 screen time came at the expense of R2's. So, but hey, that gets made up for in later movies. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a way to sell more toys. So, these are made to make money, and that probably had a lot to do with it. Yes.
But you know what? My BB-8 Lego model is right next to my R2-D2 Lego model, and they're friends. So I'm happy. I'll put a picture out on Instagram later. So,
perfect.
Okay. But then we get to the village and we go inside a hut, and Lor San Tekka is meeting with Poe Dameron. And Lor has part of the map to where Luke Skywalker is, and he's giving it to Poe, and he says, "This will begin to make things right." And he goes on to say, "I've traveled too far and seen too much to ignore the despair in the galaxy." And he further says, "Without the Jedi, there can be no balance in the Force." Poe goes on to say that the general's been after this for a long time. And of course, we get that classic line that we all quote, which is that the general, to me, she is royalty. I think we actually paraphrase it and get it wrong most of the time. But Poe's response is, well, she certainly is that. So I think there's a lot to react to in that little conversation there, starting off with who in the world is Lor San Tekka? We found more about the San Tekkas in the High Republic here recently. And of course, he's part of the Church of the Force. How in the world did he get part of this piece of the map and that no one else could find? Not in, the First Order with their agents all across the galaxy couldn't do it. And then now he's casually handing it over to Poe Dameron. So I'm going to throw it out there for general comments, starting with you, Ryder. What'd you think about all of this?
Yeah, I had a lot of the same thoughts. Like, this whole 10-minute sequence just raises a lot of questions. And Lor San Tekka, I want to know, how did he get this map? Who is this guy? Why is he just trusting it to Poe Dameron? And how does he know Leia? Like, this is interesting. I want to know like more of the backstory. And I can remember going home after seeing this movie and like Googling, like, who is this guy? We don't know his name or anything, finding out his name after. I'm like, okay, that's super cool. But there's so many questions that it raises, and you just want to dive deep into Lor San Tekka's history. And I don't know. I thought he was a cool character. I feel bad that he dies so soon, because I would have loved to have seen more screen time with him. But it raises questions about Luke Skywalker and where the heck is he and how are they going to find him? And I think I remember one of the first times I heard you, Dennis, was on Coffee with Kenobi, and you mentioned that Luke is the MacGuffin in this, and it made me think, what the heck is a MacGuffin? I had to go look that up later on, so every time I heard that term, I think of you, Dennis.
I love that. I love that you remember that, because I don't remember that appearance on Coffee with Kenobi. I've been on that podcast several times, so
No, the other thing I was thinking about is, he says it'll begin to make things right in the galaxy, and I'm thinking, shouldn't everything be right? I thought we had a Republican in power, and it says that only with the Jedi will things be in balance, which takes me back to the theme of the prequel, that there's the Force wants balance. So these things are still going on, even though it's 30 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, before I get and Jay, you can chime in on this, but that is the line that stands out to me, especially we've now covered all three of the prequel trilogy movies on the podcast, The Force Awakens, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, and the prophecy of the Chosen One, and who is going to bring balance to the Force. And we really came to understand in those movies that balance wasn't so dependent on Jedi. But now Lor San Tekka, who kind of has an Obi-Wan role as, this quest giver in a way, is now telling Poe, without the Jedi, there can be no balance in the Force. So what do you think of that? What do you make of that line?
Gosh, it goes back to what is balance? And, is it just solely the Jedi that bring balance, or is it the light side of the Force? And the Jedi are the stewards of that.
Mhm.
And I think that that's kind of what Luke has come to basically symbolize in this way, is because since he was the last Jedi at that point, especially right after Return of the Jedi, that he then became a vessel for all this hope. And so I think that the galaxy was just kind of projecting that onto him. And now that he's disappeared, it's almost like they've lost that hope. But after watching this a few different times, I kept thinking to myself, why is Luke disappeared in the first place? Was it his choice? Was he exiled, by choice, of his own volition, or was he taken somewhere? Why has he disappeared? And maybe he doesn't want to be found. Maybe that's why, and obviously that's part of what we find out later. But yeah, there's definitely that. And then, just thinking about Lor San Tekka as well, it's obvious that he has had a lot of history with Leia. And because he talks about her with such reverence, to me, she's royalty. And that is something that, out of respect, out of reverence, out of just putting Leia on this pedestal, where did that come from? As we were saying, what is the relationship? He's obviously known her and the family, as we come to find out when he, comes up face to face or face to mask, as it were, with Kylo Ren. Yeah, and just the idea that we've learned so much about the San Tekkas from the High Republic, as you mentioned, Dennis, and knowing their origin in the High Republic versus where we are now. I mean, is it the same family? Is it the same bloodline? Or is it something like, the Smiths? That's
No, I think it's
the last name.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the same bloodline. It's just that he chose to go a different way with his destiny and not follow the corporate lineage that they had going on there. But just getting back to the whole, there can be no balance in the Force without the Jedi. That line just grasped me this time around, and especially since there's been so much discussion about that in the past several years, I can't help but wonder if he's thinking that now that Luke has gone away, there's no other Jedi running around, the First Order has shown up, and there is a dark side presence, and without the Jedi there to do something about it, that we don't have any hope and balance. It's kind of an inartful way of saying it, I suppose, but you could see this longing that he almost seems like grateful that someone finally showed up, especially since it's a representative from Leia, to get this data to go find Luke so that they can begin to restore things in there. And you're right, Jay. One of the things that's happened is, like, with all of this post Force Awakens literature that talks about Lor San Tekka, it's almost always about his relationship with Luke and not so much about his relationship with Leia. And so what were those interactions that gave him such a reverence for her out there? And I suppose it could be that she just had a very gigantic galactic reputation. She was the surviving princess of Alderaan, and then she was a leader in the Senate for so many years. And despite her downfall, when her lineage was revealed, she's the one that led the rebellion to victory over the Empire. So I don't know, but it's really left to us to speculate about, I think, for the most part. But Ryder, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the balance thing after the end of Revenge of the Sith, we know there's Obi-Wan and Yoda, the two Jedi left, and then you have Vader and Palpatine as the two Sith, and I think we were led to believe that that's balance, 2 and 2. But then we come to find out in the Clone Wars and everywhere else that there's so many Jedi out there, they're just in hiding. But it seems to be almost like the Force, sees that, one side is getting a little too powerful and almost maybe a little too confident or cocky in the case of the Jedi, with the hubris and everything that is mentioned later on, that they need somebody to maybe, I don't know, they need one side to maybe humble the other side. I don't know. So with Luke going away, you could see the First Order just ramping up. They're not afraid of anything anymore. And they need the Jedi back in, at least as a presence, to keep the First Order at bay. And that's what they need Luke to do. And he is, in a way, able to do that later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever wonder too, there's part of me thinks to myself, yeah, it's great to have a Jedi that can come in and kind of save the day. And, that, oh gosh, we need a Jedi to bring balance to the Force. But yet, don't you feel like the people of the Republic kind of do themselves a disservice by saying, oh, there's no way we can win unless we have a Jedi on our side? We have to go find this Jedi. We have to find this, this magic key that's going to solve all of our problems. And so they've kind of depended so much on finding Luke that they were obviously fighting, with the resistance and everything like that, but were they truly giving it their all, I guess you could say, without the belief that there was no Jedi to help them?
I actually love that point, Jay. And you're absolutely right, which is if you follow what they just said in the opening crawl here, which is that the Republic is somehow secretly backing, they don't even say secretly, backing Leia and this resistance movement. And then if you add all the legend material in there to oppose this First Order, which is rising up to threaten the entire galaxy, is like, what are you all doing here? You're watching. We'll get to a moment here later in this segment where Poe Dameron shows up on a First Order Star Destroyer and he's like, what am I looking at? He's so stunned by his surroundings. And all of this but no one's been paying attention. No one's really surprised by the appearance of Kylo Ren. No one's surprised by their First Order stormtroopers running around, but it doesn't really seem like anyone's taking this all seriously. But if we could just find a Jedi to come in and tidy this all up, that would be really convenient. What it comes down to. And I don't want to get too snarky about this because I really love this movie. And if we didn't have all of the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy that preceded this, I don't think we'd be asking so many questions. But it's just the continuity of things that I think make us take that extra step back. And being the Star Wars geeks that we are, that it's okay. Well, I know what came before this, so what are you all talking about? But
right.
Well, all right. Yeah, and that's a great point because even in Return of the Jedi, I mean, Luke goes to the Death Star, and he was a little bit of a distraction. But the actual rebellion, they're the ones who blew up the Death Star, and Palpatine was going to die on the Death Star, no matter if Luke had gone there or not. And so, yeah, I think. If Luke hadn't got away, Rey would not have risen up like she would. I mean, Luke could have stunted the growth of a lot of these people. Even in the Rise of Skywalker, we see that the First Order officer or whatever says, is it a Navy or whatever? He says, no, they're just people. Like that's what the galaxy needed to do. So that's a great point by both of you guys.
Indeed. All right. So we got a lot more to talk about for 45 minutes into the segment. Anyway, so BB-8 barges in and he lets Poe know that the First Order is coming. And Poe tells Lor San Tekka that you all have to hive. And he tells Lor San Tekka's response is you have to leave. And then the First Order invades and the village, we see the village kind of like setting up and preparing to fight. Poe returns to his X-Wing. And then as the stormtroopers are storming off their ship, they see him and they open fire on that X-Wing and damage it. Jay, when I told you to put a pin in the whole stormtrooper comment, this is the comparison, I think, to the New Hope, A New Hope, rather, in that when we first see stormtroopers in A New Hope, they come barging into the Tantive 4 and just start mowing down the rebel resistance that's there on Leia's ship. Similarly, here they land en masse outside this village and they just come storming into the village, shooting everybody like with little mercy being shown. They ran up a few people, but anyone who's shooting at them, they just shoot back and take out on this. Which was more terrifying, the way the stormtroopers arrived in A New Hope or here in The Force Awakens?
For me, I think it's more terrifying here, only because of the fact that on the ship, I guess you kind of expect those guards to be expecting something like that, if you will. That's what their role is. But I mean, here, these are villagers. These are, it's a dark village. It's at night. You can't really see who's there. I mean, obviously, these are people that live there. So you don't know, are there children? Are there helpless people? Are there, what's going on? So I think it's more terrifying here just because it's that people factor, if that makes sense.
Ryder, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Jay because in A New Hope, they were soldiers. They were expected to fight. They knew what stormtroopers were. These villagers, who even knows if they've ever seen any First Order or anybody, and they just come down and start shooting at these villagers, and they're actually very brave to start shooting back. But yeah, the stormtroopers are like unforgiving when they're going through this village. They're burning everything. They're shooting everything. It's amazing they can actually hit something. We know how stormtroopers are, but yeah, I would be much more terrified if I was just hanging out by my hut and these guys land and just start shooting and they don't even ask any questions about anything.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. I think it's the circumstances that make these First Order stormtroopers a little bit more terrifying. It's the context here where they're pursuing a known enemy, a combatant, no matter what Leia says they are in A New Hope. But they show up this village and just round up everybody, herd them into the middle of the village. And then at the end of this segment, they'll end up taking them all out. But they don't seem, we kind of know stormtroopers throughout the original trilogy they don't appear the most competent because how often they miss and the like, but they're just mowing people down. And frankly, if you look at the beginning of A New Hope, they're not exactly incompetent there either. They storm aboard that ship and take everything over. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But then Poe returns, like I said, he returned to his X-Wing and it quickly gets disabled. He takes out a few stormtroopers before abandoning the ship. And then one of the things I had to remark about, because it was my favorite version of stormtrooper that showed up from the sequel trilogy, was the flame trooper that shows up in that village and just starts setting things on fire. I have allowed myself like a couple of action figures from each movie, and the flame trooper was the one that I got from The Force Awakens, and I keep reaching over to grab it and I keep grabbing the wrong one. So, but anyway, it's sitting here on my desk and I'm not going to delay this any longer. But I also remember I used to be big into the Top Star Wars card trader, the digital app online. And when they had their Force Awakens set that came out around this, that flame trooper was like the hardest one to get from that set. And I went through so many packs trying to get it before I finally did, and being extremely elated when that finally showed up. We get introduced to FN 2187 at this point. He comes storming off one of the transports and is immediately taken back by everything that's going on around him. Really appears that he wants nothing to do with what's going on. And when a fellow stormtrooper is shot, he leans over to try to offer some sort of care, and that stormtrooper reaches up with the bloody glove and then puts the marks down across the helmet there. And we've got several minutes before he's going to take his helmet off and reveal that it's John Boyega, and we've got a whole nother segment to go before he actually gets his name as Finn here. But what did y'all think about FN 2187's introduction?
Well, what I noticed and what I love about breaking this down like 10 minutes at a time is I notice things I don't know that I noticed before. And it was Poe who shot Finn's companion, I guess, the stormtrooper. And I probably noticed that before, but that just started the connection between Poe and Finn. I would have been just like Finn. I would have been, what the, I mean, I would like to think I would be like Finn, but like, why are we shooting this innocent people? Why is there so much going on here? Like, this isn't like a battle zone or anything like that. It's just, they're just villagers. Like, if we didn't come in so hot, maybe they wouldn't be so aggressive back towards us, but that's just what stormtroopers are. But it's nice to see that Finn is not like them. It humanizes stormtroopers a lot because he is not totally into this, and we're led to believe that every stormtrooper buys into what the Empire is selling or the First Order is selling, and we know, and we will learn later on that Finn's not the only one that thinks this way. But it's nice to see that they're humanized a little bit, and they're not all just like bloodthirsty killers.
Yeah, that you took the words right out of my mouth, Ryder, because I was thinking the same thing. This is truly the first time, and we saw Finn in the previews, coming up in the desert and just kind of looking really desperate and that type of thing. But we've never seen them humanized before, as you said. And so we've always seen stormtroopers as being these faceless, nameless, just, murder bots, essentially. And I mean, what was really the last time we saw them truly in a movie was their deaths were being celebrated by Ewoks, using their helmets as bongos. So, I mean, for Finn to be someone that is obviously having a very anxious kind of breakdown right here is totally new for Star Wars. And so I wanted to know more about that. And, seeing that the blood as it was being put onto Finn. I mean, I thought to myself, maybe if it had been another stormtrooper, they would have been like, "Oh, look, isn't this cool? Like, look at this." Kind of like when the clones used to do stuff like that. Like he would put it into a permanent sort of like thing on his helmet, but not Finn. He was very bothered by that, and you could tell that it was instantly traumatizing.
Well, and it made me wonder, was Finn already, I mean, I would assume his thoughts were already going this way about, are we doing the right thing? But did seeing his, friend get shot, his bloody gloves, seeing like this is real war, did that finally confirm to him, like, I've got to get out of this. This is not for me. I just wonder what was going through Finn's head. I would like to get the inner monologue there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you bring that up, and that's one of my other points of contention with a lot of the tie materials that come around this, because there was that middle grade book that came out that kind of painted Finn as like at the head of his class of stormtroopers, and then he gets sent on missions, and that's when his doubts start to arise with respect to what the First Order is doing. And we know that a lot of the stormtroopers, especially from the Rise of Skywalker, is that they're basically taken as children, and they're raised in with all the dogma of the First Order, and then so they buy in from a very early age. But then as we get through the Last Jedi literature, it's like, well, he worked sanitation. And that's what also comes up in the first, and then the Force Awakens here is that, he what? And okay, so you work sanitation. Well, then suddenly, why are you part of the group that's storming this village? What led from one thing to the other? And, I pick apart these things not because I don't like Star Wars. It's just because we pay so much attention to it, and you do want to make sense of everything that happens. But it is kind of frustrating with Finn's backstory about how he got from point A to point B as someone who was apparently in sanitation, and then suddenly thrust into this role of storming a village on Jakku. And who thought that was going to work? But
Gary must have called in sick that day.
Yeah.
So while all this is going on, Kylo Ren arrives on his Upsilon class shuttle, and at this point, the villagers have been surrounded by the stormtroopers and kind of herded into the middle. And then Lor San Tekka is brought to Kylo, and I don't know if this is Kylo's version of trash talking, but he says, "Look at how old you've become." And Lor's response is, "Something far worse has happened to you." And Kylo says, "You know what I've come for." And then Lor is trying to get through to him, but it's just not effective at all. "I know where you come from before you called yourself Kylo Ren." So they're already teasing that Kylo's got some other identity, which, again, they're feeding. We didn't know at the time this movie came out who Kylo Ren was. And then Kylo says, "The map of Skywalker, we know you found it, and now you're going to give it to the First Order." Lor's response is, "The First Order rose from the dark side. You did not." And Kylo's response is, "I'll show you the dark side." Like his manhood's just been challenged. And Lor then says, "You may try, but you cannot deny the truth that is your family." And Kylo's response is, "You're so right." And then he pulls out his lightsaber and cuts him down. So, does this scene work for you? Does it make sense? What do you think about this introduction to Kylo Ren? I asked a lot there, but take it anywhere you want.
So, yeah, it does make sense. And the introduction, well, let me go back just a little bit. Kylo Ren comes in very Anakin-like with the dramatic landing of the shuttle. It seems like something Anakin would do to draw attention to himself. When he comes off the ramp, it's very Vader-like when he enters A New Hope. He's flanked by troopers. He comes in after the battle is kind of over. And, if I put myself in Kylo Ren's shoes, knowing what we know later on in the movie about where he comes from, it seems like a very angsty boy that's like, yeah, I'm super cool. I'm going to be like my cool grandpa. And I don't care if you try to bring up my mom and dad and where I come from. And then he just, tries to kind of, I've been challenged a little bit. I'm going to show all these people around me that I am the tough guy, and I'm just going to cut you down. And Lor, I'm assuming maybe knew that that was going to happen, and he was trying to push his buttons. Maybe he's trying to break through this wall, hoping it breaks Kylo's facade down later on. But it works for me. I love the back and forth because it's kind of like they're having a conversation, but they're not having a conversation about the same stuff. One's asking for the map. The other one's like, look, dude, I know where you come from. You're not this bad kid. Come on, let's not do this. And he's like, yeah, I actually am this bad kid. I'm going to kill you right here in front of all these people. And so I love the dialogue in all of this movie, but this is a good one right here.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Totally. 100%. And I love how you made the comparisons between Kylo Ren and Anakin and then Kylo Ren and Darth Vader too, because I think that's perfect. And the conversation, again, it's giving you hints to, what's going on. Maybe there's a history there. Obviously, there's a history between Kylo Ren and Lor San Tekka. And it's only later, because I remember thinking at the time when he says, you cannot deny the truth that is your family. And then Kylo Ren says, you're so right. And then cuts him down. I was like, wait, what? But then later when we figure out that, as you mentioned, Ryder, that his granddaddy is actually Darth Vader, he took that as a compliment. You can't deny the truth that is your family. He's like, heck yeah, I'll take that compliment and I'll raise you, one lightsaber kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's not what Lor was getting at, but Lor...
Right. Yeah, he was trying to
got it the other way. Yeah.
Leia's side, but yeah.
That's a good pickup. I like that.
Yeah, that was well put, Jay. I think the other part of it which is the, what do we see later from Kylo, which is that he keeps feeling this pull to the light, and Lor reminds him of that right in this moment, which is that you can't deny the truth of your family. And it's like, yeah, you're right. And I'm trying so hard. And since you reminded me of, I'm going to cut you down here in this moment. And it really does foreshadow his meeting with Han later in this movie, which is the, you may try, but you cannot deny the truth as your family. And then again, what happens in The Last Jedi when Snoke taunts Kylo with, when you killed Han Solo, that split you to your core. Well, this is him trying to prove that that's not going to be the case. And no, that doesn't work at all. Yep. What'd you all think about the Kylo's lightsaber? I mean, this was we had all the traditional lightsabers from the original trilogy, except for the good guys use blue and green, the bad guys use red. And then during the prequel trilogy, we had Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber, Count Dooku's hilt, that was curved and the like. And now we get another brand new lightsaber with a crossguard and the crackling blade in this situation.
Well, I thought it was really cool when we saw it in the teaser trailer, and I thought it was really, I don't know, an interesting way to go that they don't make us wait to see Kylo Ren later in the movie like they could have. And with Darth Maul's double-bladed one, we didn't get to see that until almost the end of The Phantom Menace. And this, in the Force Awakens, he just breaks it out early on, and we're like, okay, now we've got that out of the way. Let's get on. A lot of these things you're waiting to see them happen, and if they get out of the way, then you can move on to enjoy and maybe dissect a little more of the movie or try to learn more about the movie. So I thought it was cool they kind of got it out of the way early to see him ignite that, and it's just a scary lightsaber. The crackling really is intimidating to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it growls.
Yeah.
And that's it's a good call that, we had a new lightsaber introduced by Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace, first movie in that trilogy. And then we have a new lightsaber introduced in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
First movie in the trilogy, and they're both bad guy lightsabers too.
Yeah.
But like you, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this thing is so stinking cool and very scary, because it does almost growl and breathe of its own. And it's got this really, really cool medieval looking crossguard and everything. And I was like, wow, I want to know right away. I thought to myself, I want to know how this lightsaber was built. That was one of my first things that I thought of, but I thought it was super cool. But what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, because in the Clone Wars, we learn how these, Padawans make their lightsabers from finding these crystals. We don't learn how this crazy lightsaber is made. So it just stirs up more questions about how Kylo made this thing.
Yeah. All we know is that the kyber crystal is cracked, which is what causes all the, the shimmering that's got going on there. One of the things I love about this lightsaber is I don't know if Adam Driver came up with this on his own or someone directed him to do it, but the way that whenever he pulls it out and he ignites it, it's like you can feel like it's got extra heft compared to the other lightsabers. And I remember that from that first teaser trailer that we got, which wasn't even in the movie, where he goes stomping through the woods and he pulls out his lightsaber and he juts it out to the side and the blade comes out and the crossguard ignites. It's like he actually had to like brace himself and put his muscle into doing that. And you always get that. There's just that moment where he ignites it, and it's like that brief second of hesitation, and then he swings it down at Lor San Tekka, and like it's not the average lightsaber. It's a bit more on there, and there you can feel like it's got so much power behind it just on the way he uses it. Which is different than swinging the Skywalker Legacy lightsaber around, which they even changed the sound of the way that thing ignites in the course of this movie. But I thought it was really cool. And I remember, Ryder, you brought that up when you were asking the questions at the beginning. I went on to, I can't remember which one of the t-shirt websites, if it was TeePublic or T-Furians or whatever, and someone had made a t-shirt based off of the teaser in that November. And the core image was the back of Kylo with that lightsaber ignite. And I bought it. And I don't know what happened to that t-shirt, if it just, I outgrew it, if it shrunk it or whatever happened to it. But I just love that image from the teaser.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And it could be the way that he has to activate it too, because I know just from cosplay with my fourth sister, the one that I have, my double bladed, I have to twist it. And so you have to kind of like give it a little bit of like a force, pun intended, I guess, to get it to turn on. But maybe that's like part of the activator too, is that he has to work so hard to get it on, because as we know, it's kind of like a Frankenstein of a lightsaber. We've learned that since then.
Yeah. And it reminded me, I didn't think of like it being heavier, but until Dennis said that, it reminded me of like something from Conan the Barbarian or something like that, where you've got to be a little stronger than your average person to lift this thing. And it just, I could picture his lightsaber just being heavier. And I never thought of that until you just said that, Dennis.
Yeah, that's so cool.
At this point, Poe Dameron's been watching everything that's been happening. He just sees Lor San Tekka get taken down, and then he takes a pot shot at Kylo Ren. Kylo whips around and uses a force power to not only freeze Poe in place, but the blaster bolt itself. And then a couple stormtroopers run up, punch Poe in the gut, and then drag him before Kylo. This power gets used at least a couple other times over the course of this movie, but I don't think we ever see it again after that. Do we? I could not think of another instance where he did that. It kind of reminded me of like the Force Run from the Phantom Menace during when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were on the Trade Federation ship, and they used that to get away from the droidekas, and we've never seen that power again in Star Wars outside of video games there. But what do you think about that? Is it just something that creates story problems, or why wouldn't they use that again?
I don't know. I don't know if it's just something that Kylo and his research figured out how to do, but it did seem like, we're dealing with a different type of force user when he does this. And how do you combat that if he can just freeze you like that? Like, how do you attack somebody like that? And so it made him, in my mind, seem super powerful, super evil. And I mean, to be honest, it made him super cool. I would love to be able to, if somebody's coming to attack you, just be able to freeze them like that. And I mean, how useful could that have been to, Vader or Luke or whoever? I just thought it was a super unique thing. And we see him use it a little bit more in this movie too.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously he's the grandchild of the chosen one, Anakin Skywalker himself. I think for Kylo Ren, though, freezing that bolt in midair and leaving it there was a little theatrical, kind of like, this is intimidation. This is like, look what I can do kind of thing. Because I mean, we do see Vader in Empire Strikes Back, when Han shoots at him and he kind of just like, deflects or, the bolts and that type of thing. So, I mean, it's obvious that it's possible. So he could have very easily just deflected the bolt and just had it be done with. But what really hit me this time was the fact that he left that in place the entire time that he was interrogating Poe, and he was able to keep, like all the balls juggling at the same time kind of thing. That's what really stuck with me. And I know that even the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, like he held on to that, and that focus the whole time was just like, wow, this dude means business big time.
Yeah. You stole the words right out of my mouth. That's what I was going to bring up, is that you get that, it's been part of memes and shown up on all kinds of Star Wars podcasts. Poe gets brought before Kylo Ren, and he's brought down to his knees, and Poe says, so who talks first? You talk first, I talk first. And then, Kylo's response is, the old man gave it to you, and Poe's still pulling the same antics we'll see at the beginning of The Last Jedi. It's just pretending like, just going on with his banter. It's like, it's just very hard to understand with all the apparatus. And Kylo's not having any of this. And like you said, Jay, it's like, there are villagers cowering over here, a few feet away. He's surrounded by stormtroopers, and here he is talking to Poe, and this blaster bolts just floating around. And not only that, in a moment, all these villagers are going to get killed. It's not until Kylo leaves that, the bolt just like boom, crashes right into that central structure, moisture evaporator or whatever it was that's in the middle of that village. And I think it's actually kind of an underrated part of this movie. And it shows Kylo to be so much more powerful than they let him be in The Last Jedi, even, in this case. And they take this power away from him when he's confronting Snoke. And then he doesn't use it when he's confronting Rey in The Rise of Skywalker or anything. And this is a game changer. This is not something we've seen anybody else. I mean, I like your analogy to what Darth Vader could do, but let's also keep in mind, Darth Vader has cybernetic hands. He can, if he's taken to a blaster bolt to his palm, he's not feeling that. He's like, oh, ouch, give me a Band-Aid, or, ice and cold water or whatever. The closest thing we've seen is Yoda like absorbing Force lightning, in that type of a situation here. That's him using his flesh to absorb all that. So again, I think it's incredibly underrated there, but I've said a lot. Anyone else want to talk about Kylo talking to Poe?
Well, I was just thinking with this power, and it got me thinking. Later on, we see like a tug of war between Kylo and General Hux for leadership or for Snoke's favor or whatever. And I got to think that maybe a lot of these troops have been around General Hux and around Kylo, and they may have seen this tug of war. And so maybe Kylo is like, look what I can do. You guys want to screw around with me? You might want to fall in line behind me rather than the redheaded crazy guy, because I have this unique power. I can, take you where you need to go, just stay with me. And it just seems, like Jay said, very theatrical and flamboyant and, very Anakin-like, just kind of showing off. Like, I could just go ahead and do it a straightforward way, or I can add a little flair to it. And that seems to be what Kylo chooses to do.
Yeah. Those redheaded crazy guys.
Oh, man. There's something about red hair. It makes you insane all the time. And your temper you have a hair trigger temper too.
Well, you know what I just thought of too is when you brought that up, Dennis, about Darth Vader having the cybernetic hands. We always say he's, as Obi-Wan said, he's more machine now than man. And there've been so much to his history as far as those cybernetics somehow took a little bit away of his ability to connect with the Force. And it made me think, as we were just pointing out, with Kylo Ren being able to do all of this at once and how powerful he was, what if Anakin would have stayed whole, or at least as whole as possible without, his one arm being gone? What kind of a crazy force would he have been? I mean, he was powerful enough as it was, but could you imagine if he would have been more whole? What terror could he have unleashed, and what would have his abilities have been, maybe tenfold? Who knows?
Yeah,
that's an excellent point. But we're about an hour and 15 minutes into this podcast. And so we're going to put a pin in that and save it for another episode.
Well, one thing I do want to say, about Poe in the whole, you talk first, who talks first, you talk first. That's really kind of our first humor insert into the trilogy too. And it worked for me at this point, because we've had like, what an incredible smell you've discovered, and like all of these different kinds of things. So it tracks with Star Wars humor history to this point.
Well, a great marker for Poe's personality, because like one of the
Yes.
next things we'll get is when Finn goes to rescue him, and Finn's like, "Oh, it's the right thing to do," and Poe just looks up and says, "You need a pilot." It's just it's Poe has a way of seeing things and deflecting things, and this was a great marker for his personality. Absolutely.
And he wasn't scared of Kylo. Just froze him, and he's still mouthing off to him. I think Poe's not one for humility, I guess.
No, he knows how to resist and what is and what's not going to get him in deeper doo-doo, so to speak. So another significant introduction, Captain Phasma shows up on the scene out of nowhere. And this was, of course, played by Gwendolyn Christie. One of the interesting backstory parts of this is that in the early development of The Force Awakens, Phasma was supposed to be a male. And then at some point, they gender swapped it for a woman. Rumors are that Benedict Cumberbatch was being considered for that role, or at least recruited for that role, before they switched it. And then Gwendolyn took it. And then, she shows up in her chrome armor and asks about the villagers, and Kylo says that they should all be killed. And without hesitation, she orders her stormtroopers just to do just that. I don't want to get too deep into a discussion about Phasma, because she's got bigger scenes coming up in the course of this movie. But what were your initial impressions of Phasma from what we saw here?
She's ruthless. She should be in charge of the stormtroopers, because if this is what the First Order is, and I feel like Kylo kind of represents the First Order, but she's a soldier in the First Order, and it just kind of shows how ruthless and terrorizing this First Order actually is. And yeah, that was my first impression. I feel like with the promotion and hype coming into this movie, that we were going to get more Captain Phasma. I feel like they oversold her on the promotion, but as a secondary character, I think she's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Empire, or in this case, the First Order shiny new toy kind of thing. But I thought, this is the first time we've really seen like a hierarchy in stormtroopers as well. We know that there was different divisions and whatnot, but for this presence to be there, it's almost like in some ways the Terminator with the chrome armor, kind of thing, and just super intimidating, and with the cape and ruthless, whole 9 yards. Yeah,
indeed. So she orders the villagers to be killed as Kylo commanded, and then the stormtroopers just start doing that. But FN 2187, I'm not calling him Finn, because we don't know him as that yet in this part of the movie, and he's just aghast at everything that's going on around him. And we kind of touched on that, so I don't want to spend really a whole lot here, except for the fact that after this all goes down, Kylo looks over at him and just stares, and Finn looks back in that moment. And I gotta wonder, was that really John Boyega and Adam Driver dressed up in those costumes in that moment, doing that scene, looking at each other? Because you can't see their faces, either one of them, in that moment. But that's just idle speculation here. But what do you think was going through Kylo's mind in that moment? Because he seemed to see something.
Yeah, I wrote that in my notes. Did he sense something about Finn? Was he feeling something like this guy's going to betray us? Or is this guy just not upholding his end of the stormtrooper bargain? But, without them even, being able to see their faces, you can almost feel with their body language who is in charge here and who is scared. And then when Kylo lets the blaster bolt go, you can see Finn, or FN 2187. I'll follow your example, Dennis. He jumps like he's, scared, like he wasn't expecting that. It's just Kylo's way. It felt like of kind of flexing on him a little bit.
Good call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wonder too if it was just him glancing over at FN 2187 and just saying, "I see you. I see what you just did. I see what you did there. That didn't go without noticing. Just so you know."
Yep.
Intimidation. So
yeah.
Right. So right after this, as Ryder was saying, the blaster bolt gets released, and we talked about that already. The stormtroopers take their blasters to Poe X-Wing and destroy that. BB-8, who's been running away, sees that and despairs. As he rolls off, some creature in the sand with glowing red eyes sticks its head out and kind of watches him go. I think there's some sort of backstory to that character somewhere out there. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I appreciate it for no other reason in that that's exactly something that George Lucas would have done, just for the
Yeah.
whimsy of it, of having some creature out in the desert.
Yep.
And then they return to the Star Destroyer, and Poe is still being Poe. And as he's getting herded off the transport, he's like, yeah, all right. And then he realizes where he is, and he's completely stunned that he's on the deck of a First Order Star Destroyer. FN 2187 hides himself in one of the carriers and takes off his helmet, which we get the final reveal that this is John Boyega, a black stormtrooper, which was big at the time. And then all of a sudden, Phasma shows up behind him and tells him to submit his blaster for inspection, and then asks him who gave you permission to remove that helmet. So it's kind of speaking to the regimented nature of the First Order there. So we've gone a whole lot long. So if there's anything that's significant that sticks out to you on this, what would it be?
The thing that stuck out to me was Poe's reaction when he gets in there, and you mentioned this earlier, but he's surprised at what he has seen. And it makes me think, if he has this, this connection to Leia, and he doesn't even realize how much power, how big the First Order is, then, who does know how, nobody knows how big this First Order has gotten. And this is going to be a real shock to the Resistance. They may not know what they're fighting against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good call. And I also, just to back up to the village, just the first time that we see the introduction to an Abonito, I think is what they're called, the type of alien. So just the fact that we were introduced to, as Star Wars often does, shows us these new aliens and whatnot. And but yeah, as far as being inside this carrier, and just obviously Poe's reaction to it was one of utter shock and surprise. I mean, he did not expect that.
Yeah, it's like he's surprised that the First Order has this stuff at all. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's just, again, going back to the crawl, it sounds like the First Order is now terrorizing the entire galaxy. So I'm not sure why this part was a surprise that they suddenly have a Star Destroyer. But it is what it is, and he did not expect to find himself there. He was sent to Jakku to get a part of a map, and the next thing he knows, he ends up on a Star Destroyer. So yeah, I could see the alarm that might be going through his mind in that moment. But and then of course just the brutal nature of the First Order, which is the stormtroopers really are tools in this situation, which is Phasma also noticed that he didn't shoot at the village, and submit your blaster inspection, and who told you could take off your helmet. That just goes beyond, military. Look, I wasn't in the military, but it seems like it goes beyond military etiquette to the point where it's cold and it's calculating, which is, you are a killing machine. Why weren't you doing your killing machine? I don't care how it made you feel. You better have had an issue with your blaster, or there's going to be a problem. And what are you doing without your helmet on? It's not like there's anyone that's going to cause a problem there on the deck of the Star Destroyer. And so it's a brief moment, but it really speaks to Phasma's cruelty.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that Finn's reaction to all this battle humanizes him. Well, this is like Phasma's way of dehumanizing him, and it really is a control thing. And like you said, Dennis, he's a tool. He's not a person.
Definitely. Yeah, and one more observation too about Poe giving BB-8 that piece of the map. I mean, again, it's another one of those poetry sorts of things. It's very similar to obviously what Leia did when she gave R2 the plans to the Death Star. So, to put his trust in this little droid, that this is potentially the future of everything, just shows how much he trusted BB-8.
Yeah, and didn't even tell BB-8 to go find Obi-Wan Kenobi.
You should just
go hide. I'll come back and find you.
I'll come back for you.
Yeah,
that's
find anybody. Yeah, just get out there. Follow your dreams.
All right. I got to tell you, when I put together the notes with this, I thought we were going to be lucky to get to 45 minutes, but here we are going an hour and 20. So well done, everybody here. Ryder, once again, thanks for joining us for this. It wouldn't be a movie series if you didn't show up. Well, I guess it is. It has been before, but you've been here for the beginning of most of them. But at any rate, again, thanks for showing up and helping us out with this. Before you go, and remind everybody what's going on at ES Ray and what else you're up to.
Yeah, you can listen to me every other week on Idiots Array. You can follow me online at Ryder Waldron DDS. You can follow Idiots Array at Idiots Array Podcast. You can find us probably anywhere you can find Podcast Stardust. Just look up Idiots Array, and I'm not sure what we have coming up this week. We kind of shoot. We're not. Sometimes we're not quite as organized as Podcast Stardust. We like to shoot from the hip quite often and see what comes up in our minds throughout the week, and then we kind of decide what we're going to talk about. So we have fun doing that and take some deep dives into different topics and themes and things like that in Star Wars. So we have fun.
One of the
You
things
guys
I
always
found
come
is
up with some great things, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
we try.
Love it.
when I look up either one of our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, the other one is always showed as a recommended.
Oh, really?
If you enjoyed
good. I
this,
like
you check that out. So
I like
yeah,
that. Good.
similar
Nice.
audiences. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and the first installment are the Force Awakens series. We hope you've enjoyed the discussion. And if you did, make sure you subscribe to the show so that you'll get these every month as they come out over the course of the year. Please don't forget to rate and review the show wherever it is that you're listening. And then you can find all back episodes of the show over on retrozap.com. Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what those social media contacts are and where else we can be found online?
Absolutely. It's super easy to find us. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And we also maintain some Pinterest boards with some fun things for all kinds of ideas for everything Star Wars. And then we have our 2 YouTube outlets, which includes our traditional YouTube as well as our YouTube music. So please head over to both of those, like, subscribe, share those out. And just like Idiots Array, we are also on all of your other streaming platforms as well, such as Audible, Spotify, and everything in between. And please drop us a line. We'd love to hear your thoughts. podcaststardust@gmail.com. So let us know what you thought of this episode. And also, please send us your questions. We are very much getting close to episode 1000, and we would love to have some listener questions that we can address for that and just have a lot of fun. So, and then if you'd like to support the show even further, you can pick up a Podcast Stardust piece of swag at TeePublic. So the link to that is in our show notes, and you can pick up t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, all kinds of fun stuff. And there's 7 different show logo designs to pick from.
Jay, you want to tell everybody where they can find you and what you got going on with cosplay?
Absolutely. So the best place to find me, well, actually the only place to find me is on Instagram at j.snipscosplay, where you can find me as Ahsoka from the Clone Wars, Hera from both Rebels and from Ahsoka series, as well as the Force Sister, as I was just mentioning, and gearing up for what's I'm hoping to be a fun-filled spring with a couple of conventions I've got my eye on. But until then, you can check out what I'm up to online.
Okay, upcoming on the show, Friday we'll be wrapping up the week with a look at some recent Star Wars news, and then on Monday we are getting back into our The Clone Wars rewatch. So, thanks for listening to episode 992 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great rest of your week, and until next time, may the Force be with you.